So good morning / good afternoon to our attendees this morning. Thank you for joining us a few minutes early as we get situated here and start with our talk about Quantum Safe. And we'll start up in a few more minutes, but wanted to open up early and welcome everybody, say hello, and kind of get everybody ready for this trip down the quantum safe galaxy with Michael Jordan. So thank you for being here a few minutes early. We appreciate that. So Michael, we were just talking about how you are positioned in Poughkeepsie, infamous for IBM Z, right? For many, many years, the mainframe has been developed and I believe manufactured right out of Poughkeepsie. Yep. So how many years have you been in Poughkeepsie?
I've been in Poughkeepsie. Well, I've been in IBM for 34 years. I started my career in RACF development back in 1989, and I've been in Poughkeepsie probably since the mid 90s. So close to 30 years. The first couple of years I bounced around between Myers Corners, which is a little south of Poughkeepsie, and our Kingston site, which is about 30 miles north.
Yeah, and so I'm sure you've seen a lot of change, not only at IBM and in the technologies over the years, but I'm just thinking about just the geography, right? What was Poughkeepsie like 30 years ago compared to what it's like now?
So the part of Poughkeepsie that I mostly see is Route 9 between the Mid-Hudson Bridge and the IBM site, and it's that has, well, I guess the big thing the big change that I've seen from the landscape perspective is, you know, up by the Mid-Hudson Bridge along the river, used to be, you know, mostly industrial, you know, commercial, you know, type of view. Now over the last, you know, decade or so, they've built a lot of kind of nice, you know, townhouses and condos overlooking the river. So you know, that's, I think, one of the key things that I've noticed.
And do you feel that that Poughkeepsie's become more of a back bedroom community to New York City? Is it close enough that?
Oh yeah, so Poughkeepsie is the actual, so Metro North trains, which is, you know, New York City's transit. Metro North, actually, the last stop is Poughkeepsie. So there's a lot of folks that, you know, live in Poughkeepsie and commute down to the city. In fact, you know, if I have to go, there's, you know, many times where I have briefings in New York City. We have a briefing center in Astor Place, and if I have to go to the city, I typically, you know, I don't go down the night before. I'll take a train down and kind of do a back and forth commute.
Mm-hmm. So it's close enough to do that. Yeah, so that's great. Yeah. As I mentioned, so folks, thanks for joining us a few minutes early. We're just talking with Michael Jordan here, not about basketball. We're talking with Michael Jordan, who is a distinguished engineer for IBM, about living in Poughkeepsie, New York, which most of us know is kind of like the birthplace manufacturing site, development site for IBM Z Technologies, and we're just kind of tossing around what it's like living in Poughkeepsie and how it's grown over the past 30-something years that Michael himself has lived there. So, but anyways, it is probably time to get started, being that it is 12 o'clock. So thank you all for joining us this morning / this afternoon. I'm Marie Ashway, Director of Marketing at Mainline, and I'm thrilled to be hosting today Mr. Michael Jordan to talk to us about a quantum safe galaxy with IBM Z technology. We were laughing earlier about the name Michael Jordan and the connotation to basketball. Of course, most people, when you hear the name Michael Jordan, you right away think basketball. So we do have Michael Jordan with us today, but don't expect any basketball. This is a different kind of ball, right? This is a different kind of ball. But thrilled to have Michael. Michael is a distinguished engineer with IBM. He focuses on IBM Z and Linux One security. He's the security CTO there, and really thrilled. Michael has been, I know, traveling worldwide and difficult to get. So we're really tickled, Michael, that you made some time to spend some time with us today to talk to our customers about what's happening in the world of quantum computing and how to be quantum safe with Z technology. So before I turn it over to Michael, just a few quick things. I need to do a little housekeeping, getting my little broom out here and a little bit of housekeeping. Number one, so everybody is aware, this session is being recorded. So if you have any objections with being on a session that is being recorded, now would be your time to leave, although we hope you would stay for the next 55 minutes or so. Number two, you'll also notice that you are muted, and the way to communicate with us is going to be through your chat window. So please utilize your chat window at any point in time, even just to say hello or anything you'd like to ask Michael. Please use your chat window to do that, to communicate with us, as well as the questions and answers. Same thing, use that chat window. We will break throughout the course of the session to take questions, so please keep them coming. And don't save them all to the end. Keep us on our toes throughout the entire thing. At the very end, there'll be a survey that pops. It's just one question. And I ask that you just take that quick survey to let us know if we were on target with the information that we're delivering. And if we're not on target, then that helps me know so we could alter that for the next time. So please take a minute and take that survey at the end. I'm also going to do some polling, and we're going to start with a few polls here in the beginning just to kind of see who you are, why you're here, and that type of thing. But I'm also going to do some polls throughout the course of Mike's presentation because we're going to be giving away our famous Estes rocket kits again. And those questions are going to be more on space trivia. So hopefully you brushed up on your space trivia, and we'll be doing some of those polls throughout so we can choose one or more winners of our Estes rocket kit giveaway. Lastly, this has been a series of Z technology presentations we've done throughout 2023, and anybody that's attended 3 out of 5 also will be automatically receiving a mainline gift pack. So it's going to be comprised of a bunch of logoed things like maybe hats, flashlights, I don't know, whatever we have. But I'll make sure there's some good stuff thrown in there. So we'll be sending out those gift packs as well. So I'm glad you're here. So hopefully this would be your 3 out of the possible 5. All right, so let's learn something about you. This is your time now to participate. Let me just pop this quick little poll. Okay, why are you here today? Tell us why you're here. Quantum computing seems interesting, and I want to know more. I'm concerned about security. My organization is building a quantum safe strategy, so obviously you want to learn more for that. And I thought Michael was a basketball player. And
there it is.
Let's see.
Hopefully not everyone picks that option, right?
Yeah, well, actually, so far, no one's picked that option, so that kind of surprises me. I thought for sure people would have thought you were a basketball player. All right, so anybody else, any last minute pollers? I'm going to close this down in 3, 2, and 1. All right, thank you. So it looks like, let's see, we had 60% of you are concerned about the security implications, and 40% of you are like, hey, this seems like interesting stuff, and I want to learn some more. So thank you for that. And then one more for you to kind of share with us where you are in this journey. Where is your organization in regards to a quantum safe journey? Have not started, or you're already deploying? Where are you? Looks like most of you are at the top end of these questions, either have not started or you're just beginning to consider. I've got nobody yet that's in discovery or planning, and there is nobody yet who has begun deployment. So the majority of you are just beginning to consider. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Michael, I hope that helps you a little bit as well.
Yep.
With understanding where the audience is. So with that, I'm going to turn it right over to Michael.
Okay, great. Thank you. So before we jump in, just a little bit about myself. So my name is Michael Jordan. As Marie mentioned, I'm an IBM distinguished engineer, and I am the IBM Z and Linux One security CTO. And what that means is I am responsible for security for the IBM Z and Linux One platforms, from the hardware to the firmware to hypervisors, operating systems, and the broader software stack. In this role, I work across IBM to make sure that we're bringing our clients the technology that helps them to protect against the threats of today and in the future. And I think that's a great lead into today's topic. So the work we've done around Quantum Safe is a collaboration across IBM. It's not strictly Z. We work very closely with IBM research in this evolving and emerging technology. So with that, let's get started and jump in here. Before we get to the specific topic at hand, I did want to take a minute or two to talk about our high-level approach to security for the platform. It wasn't long ago, if you were to ask somebody about security on the IBM platform or IBM mainframe, they would probably say, oh, it's RACF, right? That RACF was the focus. And I think that was true, going back maybe 8 or 10 years ago. But what we've been trying to do over the last 3 generations and will continue to do in the future is, looking at specific challenges and pain points that organizations are facing and build solutions that are integrated into all levels of the stack to help organizations address those challenges and pain points. And so in the Z14 timeframe, the focus was on, data protection, helping organizations protect data at rest and data in flight. And one of the things that we try to do is kind of stay ahead of the curve. And I think that's a great example. So when we came out with, pervasive encryption, there was no, hard mandates for, requiring host-based, encryption of data at rest, for example. If any of you are in the financial services industry and where PCI DSS is in scope, you might have noticed the most recent version of the specification, PCI DSS 4.0, actually is now requiring host-based encryption. What they're saying is, disk encryption alone is not sufficient, and that if you're using disk encryption, you need to use some other form of mitigation. And so, trying to stay ahead of the needs of our client base is one of our key approaches. With Z15, our focus was on data privacy and confidential computing. When we delivered pervasive encryption, one of the things that we heard from our clients was, hey, IBM, this is great, we can protect our data in flight and data at rest. One of our biggest concerns is the data that we send to IBM and other vendors in the form of dumps. And so can you help us with this? And we introduced what we call data privacy for diagnostics that provides the capability for organizations to basically identify and redact sensitive data in dumps before they send it to IBM or other vendors. And then also for our Linux One environments, we introduced something called secure execution for Linux, which is basically a hardware enforced secure enclave. So I'm not going to be talking about those specifically beyond what I just mentioned today, but if you're interested in any of those topics, by all means, we can certainly do follow-up webinars on those. And then with Z16, we expanded the aperture, bringing capabilities in the areas of cyber resilience, continuous compliance, Quantum Safe, and then most recently with our GA 1.5, we introduced the validated boot for ZOS, building on the validated boot capabilities we've been building into the hardware in our Linux environment. So that's the whole idea here is we own or contribute to large portions of the platform, and we want to take advantage of that to bring solutions that address specific kind of challenges and pain points. For today's discussion, though, we're going to focus on Quantum Safe. So a little bit of background before we get into what we've done with the Z16 to set a little bit of context here. So the reality is that cryptography has become ubiquitous. If you look at how cryptography is used, it's built into internet protocols. All of the security for our protecting data in flight is all based on cryptography, including establishing a secure session and exchanging cryptographic key material. Critical infrastructure relies on this, from pipelines to to electric grids, advanced car control systems for automobiles, as well as technologies like blockchain, financial services. The protocols that they use for processing payments are heavily reliant on cryptography, as well as your traditional enterprise applications. So cryptography is basically ubiquitous. The reality is that we're entering a new cryptographic era where there are in the not so distant futures, quantum computers will have sufficient strength to be able to apply I would say algorithms, not cryptographic algorithms, but algorithms that will enable a quantum computer to break the classical cryptography that we just discussed here as being the foundation of our infrastructure today. And this point in time where this is happening is what they're calling or referring to as years to quantum, or Y2Q. For those of you that have been around for a number of years, you might remember Y2K, where organizations had to scramble to address cases in their applications and software and hardware where dates were represented as 2 characters, and they had to make sure that they were represented at 4 characters and everything behaved well. I think one of the key differences between Y2K and Y2Q is with Y2K, we knew exactly when we had to have that change made by. With Y2Q, it's a little bit more open-ended. Nobody knows exactly when this is going to happen. It could be in the next 5 years, it could be in the next 10 years. It all depends on how the quantum computer technology evolves. But there's concern that that data is already at risk, and when you look at the life cycle of data, where in many cases for many different industries, the duration of where data has value is measured in not days or months, but it's measured in years and decades. There's concern that there are state-sponsored actors that are harvesting that data now with the intent of being able to decrypt that data at some point in the future, and so there's concern that that there's already an exposure that exists today. So this is the notion of Y2Q. Again, if there's questions on this, please put them into the chat, and we can talk about them. I do want to take a minute to kind of explain the challenge that we're facing and why this is a problem. So when we look at cryptography, the strength of cryptography, and let's take asymmetric cryptography. So this is algorithms like elliptic curve and RSA that are used for digital signatures. They're used for authentication. They're used for things like exchanging keys, shared secrets between two different parties. The security of those is based on the fact that there are some mathematical problems. It all comes down to math, and that there's some mathematical problems that are really easy to solve in one direction, but they're very difficult or intractable to solve in the other direction. And so, for example, for RSA, this is the factorization problem. So the way that RSA works is the keys are, these large prime numbers, and multiplying, two large prime numbers together, and you can kind of see that represented in the bottom left of the screen. Multiplying two large prime numbers together is really easy for classical computers to do, but the opposite, the inverse of that, which is I have the product of multiplying two large prime numbers together, and I want to factor out what those two prime numbers are. That's really hard for a classical computer, and the security of RSA cryptography is based on that basic premise. And for elliptic curve, instead of the integer factorization, it's the discrete logarithm problem. But the concept is the same, that it's easy to do operation in one direction and hard in the other. With a quantum computer, there's an algorithm called Shor's algorithm that if you have a quantum computer with sufficient qubits, instead of these problems taking millions of years for classical computers, a crypto-relevant quantum computer can solve this in a matter of hours. And so if you just kind of pause there and think about what we've been talking about, how cryptography is used, and how it's become ubiquitous, the security of our systems today is entirely dependent on it. And when we get to a point where quantum computers have this ability, it's too late, right? The security of our systems will be undermined. For symmetric cryptography on the right-hand side, the problem isn't as drastic. There is an algorithm called Grover's that can weaken the security of symmetric cryptography, but the expectation is that it's not going to completely break it. And the algorithms that we have today, if we move to the largest key lengths, so for example AES, those will be resistant to quantum threats. So that's the background. Again, if there's questions on that, please put them into the chat. So what does this mean in terms of our cryptography today? And this is kind of a nice summary view of that. So the reality is that for symmetric cryptography, we want to move to the stronger key lengths, and that's in the first couple rows on this page. So DES and triple DES. In fact, by the end of this year, NIST is calling for triple DES to be completely phased out. So that's even outside the scope of quantum. But the expectation is AES-256 will be secure for some time to come, and similarly for hash functions, the larger SHA algorithms will be considered secure. But when we come to asymmetric cryptography like RSA, elliptic curve, those are no longer considered secure when we have a cryptographically relevant quantum computer. So what does this mean in terms of what a cyber criminal can do? Well, this really kind of goes back to that first page, and if you think about all the different use cases for cryptography, if you think about how if somebody can break the cryptography, the damage will be a function of how that cryptography is being used. But at a high level, they can fake identities for websites, because cryptography is used for authentication. There are many authentication mechanisms that rely on digital signatures. We can fake downloads, because the protection mechanisms for digitally signing and validating software are also using asymmetric cryptography. The key agreement that happens for things like TLS handshakes or key protection for encryption of data at rest could be using asymmetric cryptography. So all of these things basically can be undermined, and basically a cyber criminal can find or derive your keys. That's the reality. So we've come to a point, a fork in the road, where we need quantum safe cryptography. And I'm going to pause here because I think Marie has some more polls for you guys. So Marie, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mike. And yeah, I do have the first of our space trivia polls. So get your polling fingers ready so we can do these. These will be fun. All right, so let me go find it. Here we go. All right, space trivia. What is the brightest planet in our solar system? Mars, Jupiter, Venus, or Saturn? Brightest planet. I'm not going to leave this up long because I know you'll probably be tempted, although you won't do it, I know, but be tempted to go Google. So I won't leave this up too long.
No, right. So Google's not allowed for answering this?
Google's not allowed, Mike. Okay, I'm going to close this in 3, 2, and 1.
How about Bing? Can they use Bing or Chat GPT?
No, none of that. No, none of that. None of that. All right, let's see. Most of you had it right. Venus is, in fact, the brightest planet in our solar system. So I have some notes here that I wrote down. Let's see. So it's also the hottest planet. And the reason it's hot is because there's a thick cloud layer, which tends to trap the heat towards Venus itself. So that makes it the hottest planet. And the thick clouds reflect most of the sunlight that reaches it, which is why it's the brightest planet, and it's also the closest to the Earth. So all those reasons, Venus is the answer. Okay, Mike, back to you.
Okay, great. All right, so let's continue. So the reality is we need to identify new cryptography. Fortunately, NIST has been looking at this problem for many years. In fact, they started a program, their post-quantum crypto program, back in the 2016 timeframe. And as you can see, from the timeline here, that they're pretty far along in that process today. And so where we're at today is actually NIST a few weeks ago published draft standards for key encapsulation mechanisms, so crystals, Kyber, I think, and for digital signatures, they had 3 crystals, dilithium, Falcon, and Sphinx Plus. And I think as of today, they've published 3 draft standards. So those are NIST 203, NIST 204, and NIST 205. So if there's any crypto enthusiasts out there, you can actually go to the NIST website and download and read through those. And they're basically taking comments on those to incorporate into that. And the expectation is in sometime 2024 that those standards will be published. And once those standards the NIST publishes those standards, the expectation is that we'll see other standards organizations like IETF, which defines the internet security protocols, will incorporate quantum safe algorithms into things like TLS and IPsec, and so we'll see kind of the next turn of the crank in terms of standards evolution. And then at some point we'll see industry standards for things like financial services and some of the other use cases we saw on that earlier page adopt the NIST standards as well. In fact, when you look at things like from IETF, they already have draft standards out there for a new version of TLS based on TLS 1.3 that incorporates these quantum safe algorithms. And so the expectation is pretty quickly after NIST publishes its standards, the other standards bodies will have their standards in place as well. I mentioned at the very beginning that we work closely with research. So IBM Research, actually, the ones that are marked with an asterisk up there, either developed or contributed to those submissions to the NIST program. And from our perspective, that was the research played a vital role in kind of informing us as to, the likelihood of, algorithms like Crystal's Kyber and Crystal's dilithium making it through the process, which actually enabled us to move forward with, making use of those algorithms. I also wanted to point out that the NSA has also published what they call their CNSA 2.0, and they've actually set deadlines for national security systems to move towards quantum safe cryptography, and the deadline is 2035. But what's interesting is if you look on the left-hand side of the page, a lot of the interim deadlines are much more near term than 2035, and you can start to see that the rollout of this starts in the 2025 timeframe and continues through 2035. So this is actually, from my experience in talking with organizations, has actually caused organizations to sort of take a look at this and say, okay, we if NSA thinks this is important to go off and do, then we think we have to start this process. So that's kind of what's happening from a standards perspective. Now kind of shifting gears towards technology a little bit. And like I said, we've been talking with our clients, and this is a quote from one of our clients that's looking to start this process now. And I'm going to pause here for another poll from Marie.
Great, thank you, Mike. Appreciate that. I'm impressed, by the way, that you're remembering which ones we decided where we were going to pause to do some polls. So
and I have a confession to make. I didn't even write it down. So
wow, which is why you're the distinguished engineer and I am not. So this is great.
That's a low bar, by the way.
All right. So before we learned which planet was the hottest, hottest and brightest, right? Venus, hottest and brightest. Which planet has the strongest winds? Uranus, Neptune, Earth, or Mars? And I'll give you a hint. The hint is that the winds can be in excess of 1,100 miles an hour.
Wow.
So that should narrow that down a little bit for you. In excess of 1,100 miles an hour.
Didn't Hurricane Katrina have winds of 1,100 miles an hour?
I think that's what I was told. Yeah, that's what I was told. For sure.
Think about that. That's like 10 times what we see for hurricanes. That's crazy.
Yeah, right, that is crazy, right? I can't even imagine that happening. Okay, I'm going to close this down in 3, 2, and 1. All right, let's see. I'm going to share this out with y'all so you can see what each other said, not individually, but as groups. Okay, so let's see. The answer is in fact Neptune. So most of you that answered were correct. Neptune is the answer. And their scientists say that the strong winds could be caused by heat that's deep within the planet's core. However, when you read more about that, there's really no conclusive evidence that that's what's causing the winds, but that's what is suspected to cause those winds of Katrina strength of 1,100 miles an hour. So great, thank you for that.
So does Earth have the slowest or the weakest winds, or don't you have that data at hand?
I don't have that data. I think I need a quantum computer to figure that out for me.
Okay. All right. So let's keep chugging along here. So what have we done with IBM Z16? we've positioned this as the industry's first quantum safe system, and I'll talk a little bit what we mean by that. The one thing I want to point out is, that doesn't mean that everything, the entire stack is completely quantum safe. It really means the core or the heart of the system itself is quantum safe. And what we did was, we basically looked at our system, and identified places within the hardware, within the firmware, where we're using cryptography and where it's a protocol that we own and can change without causing any concerns around interoperability. And we went ahead and hardened the system to use quantum safe cryptography. And we did so in a way that we were actually using dual or hybrid schemes, where we're using the existing classical cryptography, coupled with quantum safe cryptography, and the strength of that combined system is, in order to break it, you have to be able to break both of those. And the whole idea behind that is, we wanted to make sure the security of the system was at least as strong as our existing standards today, which is, our things like RSA and elliptic curve. So we retained that and combined it with the quantum safe cryptography. And an example of where we did that is with our firmware and the secure boot of our firmware. So if you're not familiar with this, all of the firmware that runs on a IBM Z system is starting with Z15. Is digitally signed at the factory, and when you boot up one of your Z servers, that those signatures are validated, and if the signature doesn't validate, the system doesn't boot up. So with Z16, we've enhanced that so that we're signing both with elliptic curve cryptography as well as with crystals to lithium. And again, when we do that validation is done on both of those, and both of the signatures have to be successful in order for that to pass. Another example is, if you're familiar with our crypto accelerators, and we have our on-chip crypto accelerator that we call the CPAC-F. We have a capability that we call protected key that makes sure that the key material is not visible in the clear in memory, and it's wrapped. And we have a key exchange program or mechanism that we use, and that is also using Crystal's Kyber to make sure, again, a dual scheme using Crystal's Kyber and elliptic curve to make sure that that is also getting a quantum safe level of security. So that's the first pillar on the left there, of building a quantum safe system. And again, as time goes on, we'll expand that as standards evolve, and kind of work our way up the stack to add more and more quantum safe capabilities. The other, in the middle of the page, the other prong of what we've done is our hardware security module. We call that the Crypto Express. For the Z16, it was the Crypto Express 8S. We have implemented crystals to lithium and crystals Kyber algorithms in the HSM, in the hardware, and we have extended the APIs on the operating system, so whether that's Linux or ZOS, to allow organizations to modernize their applications to make use of quantum safe cryptography. So giving organizations the ability of changing and moving towards quantum safe cryptography, similar to what we did within the system. And then the last pillar on the right is focused on providing tooling to help organizations create a crypto inventory. When you think about moving to quantum safe, the very first step of the process will be to discover where you're using cryptography within your environment, and building a crypto inventory that you can use to basically understand risk and build a plan for moving from point A to point B. So, if you take nothing else away from today's discussion, I think the one key thing that I would want everyone to walk away with is, start the process now, and the first step of that process is to discover where they're using cryptography, and I'll talk a little bit about how we've done that. But before we move to the next page, I also want to point out that, IBM, we had to go through this process ourselves. So when we first looked at doing this, we made this decision back in the 2018, 2019 timeframe. And at that point in time, we did not have an inventory of all of the crypto that we have. If you think about, at the beginning, I explained my responsibility encompasses, the hardware, the firmware, hypervisors, operating systems. We didn't have an overall inventory of all the crypto that we had on the platform, and so the first step of our process was building such an inventory. And so along those lines, I want to spend a few minutes talking about the tooling that you've got available to help you in building that inventory. And it's a combination of, I would say, static scanning tools, as well as dynamic, tracking and monitoring capabilities. So the first one is what we made enhancements to the IBM Application Discovery and Delivery Intelligence, or ADDI tool. So some of you may be using that today as part of your, DevOps pipeline. So that tool can now discover where crypto is being used within your COBOL applications, and provide, an inventory along with metadata in, discovering, crypto usage at the application level. We also, as part of our Z16, provide the ability of doing dynamic crypto usage tracking. And so with our Z16, all of the CPAC-F, which is the on-chip accelerator for cryptography, can be reported through a new set of SMF records, the SMF30s, that basically identify all of the use of the CPAC-F and tie that back to a specific unit of work that's driving that. And if you think about why that's necessary, is the CPAC-F cryptography can be invoked directly by instructions, so it's extremely low level. So in order to understand every usage and being able to tie that back to a unit of work, we had to instrument, the hardware and the firmware and the operating system to really provide that view. And so that's new with Z16, and so we have dynamic usage crypto tracking that you can use to understand how you're using both the CPAC-F as well as the Crypto Express. The next one is around the crypto analytics tool, and this really provides you a view of where your cryptographic keys are. And if you think about the process of migrating from classical cryptography to quantum safe, you're going to have to go and do key rotation and replace your existing classical encryption keys with quantum safe. And so the crypto analytics tool can help you discover where those keys are laying. And then lastly is another dynamic capability that we introduced with Z14 in the context of pervasive encryption, the Z encryption readiness technology that allowed organizations to understand where and how their network traffic was being protected. And this tool also provides a vital role in helping organizations understand the cryptography they're using and which algorithms would be considered, quantum safe, and which algorithms would have to move to new cryptography. So that's that view of the tooling. And then just kind of a couple more points in closing, and I'll turn it back to Marie, is as part of the Z16, we introduced a red book on getting started and transitioning to quantum safe cryptography. As you might expect, this has been one of the most downloaded red books of all time. There are lots of interest in this. If you haven't downloaded this and taken a look at it, I highly recommend that you do so. And then I wanted to take a minute also to sort of point out a couple of other industry initiatives that are going on in this space. So the Cloud Security Alliance National Cybersecurity Center I think that's a UK organization, and Electronics and Telecommunications Standards Institute, ETSI. They all have programs. We talked about NIST earlier. NIST is not the only organization, government organization look at this. This is a global initiative, and here's some resources for you guys to take a look at. And then the last one I wanted to point out is the National Cybersecurity Center of Excellence, NCCOE, and they have their migration to post-quantum crypto. They're going to be publishing a paper in the relatively near future, and what's important and significant here is that IBM was actually a collaborator in this migration to post-quantum crypto. And in fact, as part of this, they had a Z16, and we're leveraging, the tooling that we talked about on this page here. They're actually leveraging that tooling and sharing their experience and using that tooling for the planning and migration to post-quantum crypto. And with that, Marie, I'll turn it back over to you. And I know you have another poll. And again, if there's any questions, please put them in the chat. Hopefully that gives you, at least a high-level view of what the challenge is when it comes to quantum safe cryptography, what's happening from an industry point of view, what we've done with IBM Z16, and lastly, what you can do to start, this process within your own organization.
Great, thank you, Michael. And we do have a couple of questions in the chat, so I do want to take those before we pop up the last poll. I also wanted to mention to the audience that there is a copy of this slide deck posted out here in the handout window here in GoToWebinar. So feel free to download that at any point in time during this time. So go ahead and grab that for yourselves. I also chatted out the link to the Red Book that Mike was talking about, the Getting Started Red Book. So that is out here in the chat for you as well. All right, so questions. First question from Tom is, what do I have to do on my Z16 to enable these capabilities?
Sure. So let me go back. Let me go back to that page and talk through that. That's a great question. So what I talked about on the left-hand side here, so making use of quantum safe and hybrid schemes within the infrastructure itself. There's nothing that needs to be done to enable that. So when you plug in, and power on a Z16 machine, it will be using these, hybrid schemes by default. Nothing you need to enable. So again, using the combination of both classical and quantum safe for those use cases that I described. So that's, kind of out of the box, no enablement needed. And then in terms of the middle here, the Crypto Express 8S, again, by default, those algorithms are present. And as long as you have, the right levels of the software to surface those, you can start making use of those. And the crypto inventory tools, there's, other than the monitoring, there's no specific tie to the hardware, and can start taking advantage of those, when you have the appropriate levels of that software.
Thanks, Mike, for that answer. And thank you, Tom, for your question. Appreciate that. And we have another question here. This one is from John. And John is asking, is the Z16 a crypto computer?
Crypto or quantum?
Maybe he means quantum?
Yeah, maybe.
Yes, he says quantum. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's a question I get quite a bit when you hear about quantum safe versus the difference, this distinction between quantum safe and a quantum computer. So Z16 is not a quantum computer. It is a very much a classical computer. It implements or provides quantum safe algorithms, which are essentially cryptographic algorithms that are implemented on classical computers with the intent of protecting against attacks, potential attacks from quantum computers that can apply those algorithms like Shor's to break the classical cryptography. So that's the kind of, I think, the key distinction there.
Thanks, Mikey. That was a great question for sure. Thank you. All right, if there are other questions, please certainly put them into the chat. In the meanwhile, I'm going to go on and just throw up this last poll on some space trivia. So let's see. All right, let's see. There are four planets that have rings around them. Which one does not have a ring around it? Now, I gave you 5 different choices. And this was, when I was researching this, I have to admit, I did not realize that we have 4 planets with rings around them. I think there's an obvious.
So I would have gotten, just so you know, I would have gotten all of these questions wrong. So I need to go study my planets a little bit more, because I wouldn't have been able to answer any of those.
Yeah, this one is a tough one. This is a tough one, but I agree, Mike, that I did not know the answers to these either. But I have fun doing these polls, because this way gives me the opportunity actually to go learn something as I research it. So, all right, so which one does not have a ring? Okay, I'm going to close this down in 3, 2, and 1. All right, let's see. Oh, I'm impressed that you all are fast on the Google, or you all know your planets. Pluto is the answer. Pluto does not have a ring. I did not realize, y'all, that these other planets had rings. Yes, Saturn, we all know about Saturn, but yeah. So, Pluto. Great, thank you for playing along with my trivia. Oh, all right, so now I'm getting a lot. This is great. Now I'm getting a lot of people on their chat. Pluto is not a planet. Thank you, Roger. You're right. That, yeah, it used to be, right? Not anymore. So Roger, Jeff, Dave, thank you. Yes, we'll give you all a free a buy on that one, because you're right. Pluto is no longer a planet. It's funny. The whole while you all quiet, and all of a sudden when I put something up, and you're like, oh, wait. Pluto's not a planet. But thank you. Thank you for communicating.
So at least you know everyone's paying attention.
Everyone is paying attention, and I love that. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So, okay, are there any other questions for Mr. Jordan today, outside of our little planet thing? Anything else for Michael? All right, the window is quiet, Mike, so I think we're at end of job. Thank you so much. Did you want to conclude with something? Please go right ahead.
Oh, no, thank you. Well, I just want to say thank you for inviting me, and I always enjoy your webinars, and the polling actually makes it a lot of fun. So you guys do a great job. Yep.
Fabulous. Great. Thank you. Thanks for being here. We appreciate your expertise and you being here to work us through all of this. Hopefully everybody's learned a little something today. And it is being recorded, as I mentioned. It's recorded. It'll be up on replay on our on-demand page on mainline.com. So you can find it there. It'll probably be up there, I would say, by early to mid next week. This will be up and ready. So feel free to take another peek at it or share it with a coworker. And with that, I will let you all go. Thank you for spending your past hour or so with us. Have a great rest of the day. Let us know how we can help with any of your other Z needs. Thank you all. Take care. Bye.